Hello and welcome to Raising Vibrations. You're with Simon today, and in today's video we're going to be looking at Mars in Aries. We're going to be looking at the retrograde period that Mars in Aries is going to be taking place, and we're going to be looking at the emotional journey that this represents to us, and also just looking at the current astrological weather as it stands today. So I hope that everybody's okay during this time. I must admit that the contents of this video is definitely going to speak to the acknowledgement that maybe between now and I would say the 1st of October, that things are going to become very intense emotionally, and there has been a tremendous amount of preparation for this phase. And as the actual thumbnail suggests, a rite of passage, in my view, is what is on the cards for us. So before I jump into the content of the video, let me just outline some things. Firstly, in order for this video to really have the effect that I intended to have, I encourage you to find a space to which there are no distractions and that you can dedicate time to be present with what it is that I'm sharing and how that relates to your personal life. This acknowledges your time, and it acknowledges the capacity for this material in some way, shape, or form to be valuable to you. Okay. 2, I encourage you to fully feel during this video. In other words, fully feel what rises up for you, fully feel what naturally comes to the surface and what sensations you experience. And I encourage you to also contemplate the nature of what I'm sharing if you feel that this is actually valuable in that way. Also, to acknowledge what's really real and authentic for myself. If you are somebody that has not come to this channel before and you're clicking for this for the first time, the way that I do astrology is not your general way where I ramble a bunch of numbers off, and this aspect means that and it speaks to this, etc. I like to speak about the emotional journey of what happens in you, or what we're sharing collectively, the potential that the astrology or the aspects are revealing to us. And it is very abstract, and it invites a kind of artistic experience. In other words, instead of telling you what to think, I'm encouraging you to contemplate the nature of your own process. So if you feel that that is something that you're open to exploring, allow the video to be present with you. If that's not something that you're looking for, then please move on to another video, okay, as to not waste your time. So to anybody else that has been watching this for a long time, thanks very much for all of your support. I appreciate that. And I'm really excited to actually share with you what I feel is coming up for us astrologically, okay? All right, so to do justice on this video, or at least the thumbnail, I'd like you to hold the image of this picture in your mind, not only during this conversation, as a alchemical process, an archetypal engagement that you can have with your psyche, as it symbolizes to me in great depth the contents of what I feel is going to be occurring for us individually in our lives, and also what I think and see as the potential for the next couple of months, particularly, especially with Mars obviously being in Aries and what that means for us. So Mars in Aries is going to be Mars is going to be in Aries for quite some time. And if you're not familiar with other forms of information that you might have picked up on, Venus is going to be squaring Mars for a period of time. Venus is going to be in opposition to Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter, which is in Capricorn. We are going to have Venus also squaring Mars, and so there's going to be a lot of activity within not only cardinal signs, which are Aries, Cancer, and Capricorn in this case, nothing in Libra, but Libra is deeply integrated in this process. So there's a lot of change, and these are big transits. So let me put a large disclaimer out here. These aspects are not to be played with. They are not aspects and energies that are going to be, if you interact with them, I encourage you to take time to witness what is taking place in your life and to be very responsible with how you allow these energies to take place in your life, because they can and hold the potential to, just as the flame of transformation can be incredibly, exactly that, transformative, it can also hurt. It can also burn. And you, me, we have a responsibility by understanding this to not interact or add to the flame of this deep, intense transformational process. So that is to say, by contributing to effective change within your life, check in with your responses to things, allow time to digest, in a sense, what it is that you feel, think, are experiencing, and also to check in with what the experience is revealing to you about yourself and what you're bringing to the experience, okay? Whatever that might be. I feel within my own personal life, it is definitely something that is important to consider. And there are a lot of really profound rites of passage opportunities that for me personally, I am moving through. So that is to say that anybody that is also experiencing some energy at the moment that can be very, very intense, to just take it easy for a bit. This is not energy that needs to be rushed. This is an emotional transformational period in our lives and requires us to really, really check in with our capacity to manage that. Okay. So that being said, let's jump onto slide 1 of this conversation today. And the first thing that I want to draw everybody's attention to is the fact that Mars in Aries, it will be from the 27th of June 2020 until the 6th of January 2021. Sorry for the writing. I actually changed the background at the last minute. So that's why that white's there. So 6th of January 2021. That is a long time. That is almost an entire, like half a year, you know, that's going to be there. So there is a lot of emphasis on this aspect, this transit. It is definitely something that is going to cause a tremendous amount of change within the collective. And so hopefully today this can be a video that gives you the different ways that this can show up. So Mars will be retrograde from the 9th of September to Friday the 13th of November. Okay, so pretty ominous day there, 13th of November, Friday, and that will be when Mars will be retrograde. My interpretation of Mars's retrograde is a very deep reflection on what it is that we're actually experiencing regarding this chart that you're seeing at the moment. So this chart is drawn from today, which is the 8th of August 2020. And what you can see here is the moon squeezed in between Chiron and Mars, moon in Aries, right? So the moon first hits Chiron, the asteroid, and then it takes its energy. So all of us right now over the last 2 days or over the last day have had that moon Chiron conjunction. And so collectively, we all are carrying something within us, like the subconscious has been made a little bit conscious. Then the moon will carry that energy over into Mars, which will bring to us an experience of how we may or may not react to something. So that's the thing that I want to share with you, is that when the moon actually crosses Mars, it will actually set in stone the cycle of initiation. So we are all in a state of being initiated, and we are being initiated into the culmination, i.e. the closure, the ending of Saturn's transit through Capricorn. So Saturn is currently in Capricorn at the moment, and it is in retrograde form, meaning it's moving backwards. And so Saturn's energy is in a state in which we are taking all of the lessons that we've been emotionally maturing through while Saturn's been in Capricorn, and it is now giving us the end of the final exam, the rites of passage. So are you ready to be initiated into the final boss? Are you ready to be initiated into the final slaying of the dragon? Is the hero ready to take the sword and finally slay the inner shadow that exists within yourself, right? So you can finally come into this healing process. This is individually for us. So the moon moving across this area here in Aries is the initiation. Now, on the 11th of August, we're going to have the moon conjunct Uranus, which of course will then naturally square the sun, and that will activate the Sun-Uranus aspect that's been taking place, which is a big deal because, of course, we've got what it is that is being transmuted, and it has to do with deep, deep psychological and emotional patterns of value that we hold within us. And in a more primitive way, it speaks to the capacity for us to finally liberate and individuate from a deep attachment to the part of us that is very primordial. This is what I talked about in the most recent new moon or full moon that we had with the moon being in Aquarius. So expect sudden changes or sudden moments of awakening that will occur, and that will be tied in with what is being initiated into your life now with the moon and moon and Mars conjunction. So that's pretty cool. Then on the 15th of August, Venus the moon is going to conjunct Venus here, right, in Cancer, and that's going to square Chiron. So the moon's going to then initiate the Venus square Chiron aspect, and it is also going to then reveal to us, and this is the thing, it's going to reveal to us the underlying emotional attachment that is connected to the initial phase that Mars was brought in, like what Mars was brought into us today. So over the last 3 days, we'll be initiated into some experience. The moon will then hit Uranus and will bring us a perspective shift that we need to hold on to. The moon will then conjunct Venus, which will square Chiron, and that is when we'll become emotionally aware of the underlying cause that put that defense mechanism in place, or put that shadow in place, or was the result of a trauma, whatever it is that's in your life, like an unconscious attachment and philosophy or truth or a belief that you have that keeps you disempowered, right? And of course, that's a really, really big deal. Then on the 18th, right, this is August the 18th, on the 18th, 19th, we're going to have a new moon. And this is when the moon actually conjuncts the sun, of course, in Leo with Mercury there. And this is a big deal because there's going to be a fire trine. So that's the moment in this initiation passage where we will get to transmute the unresolved emotional complex, the deadwood, the decay of what we are carrying with us that is no longer relevant or real for what is actually making us authentic. So in order for us to be authentic, we need to feel secure within ourselves. We need to feel safe within ourselves so that we can be real with something and not feel that we need to protect or, as Dr. Carbon Mateo talks about, choose attachment over authenticity. Okay? So we are on a path of authenticity. This is what this energy is about. The Mars and Aries, it's the rite of passage to lead us to the point in which we can be deeply real, vulnerable, and authentic, and not need us to sacrifice or repress or put aside something that's really real for us. So we are becoming more authentic, more real, more honest. And this initiation is bringing us to the point in which we'll clear away the things that are false and that no longer keep us, just basically in our creative purpose, ultimately. So that's the new moon. And then on the 29th of August, Venus will oppose Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto. And Venus will, that's Venus. And then the moon will be conjunct Jupiter, Pluto in that aspect. This is on the 29th of August. And all of this will be squaring Mars in Aries. So the emphasis here is, how is Mars in Aries reflecting to us the initiation of change? And the moon is literally between now and the end of the month setting up the playbook, the experiences that you will deal with during Mars retrograde. Okay, because then on the 9th of September, Mars goes retrograde and we go into a regressive state of reflecting on the actions, choices, and behaviors that we have needed to use in the past in order to protect ourselves, defend ourselves, actions, choices, beliefs that we have used in order to allow for purpose and meaning to be validated in life, whether it be to feel inauthentic, to maintain connection, whether it be to be attached to certain ideologies or belief systems that you felt were a guiding principle, but realized later on that it wasn't really what you really felt or authentic with. So there's kind of themes. We're clearing away, we are burning away, we are letting go of the identity that no longer serves us in its most simplest sense. And so when Venus does actually oppose Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn on the 29th, this is going to bring us into a tremendous power of emotional transformation. That, I think, is when we will go through the actual passage itself. That will be the dark night of the soul experience. That will be the surrender, letting go process, because it's during the Mars retrograde that we will heal, applying self-forgiveness, so on and so forth, as we have gone through this intense process. So it's, again, very, very intense period, highly volatile energy, but incredibly transformational. So this is sit tight, pay attention to what's occurring in you, pay attention to what's real and what's not real, pay attention to what you feel is alive and creative and purposeful for you. And if that is something that is part of your trajectory, in other words, you're seeing creative potential arise within inside of yourself, this is a powerful time to do that with. Okay? All right. So that's my reflections on the astrology itself. What are, and this is the next part of this conversation, is the contemplation, the sense of, what do I see taking place for us? Okay. And this meets it so perfectly. Do you remember like I said, in November last year when Jupiter entered Capricorn, I did a video and I used 2 images. And the one image was of a door. And I talked about us entering this cave, as it were, entering the door and seeing ourselves. It's all dark. What is there, right? And so we are, in a sense, at what I consider to be the final phase of the deep transformational process. In other words, since November last year, as we entered the cave, we've been going through trials and tribulations and intense experiences where, just if you look at the world in general, we all know 2020 in a very cliche kind of meme way, that's been going around the internet, and how we identify with it as just being a roller coaster ride of intense madness, right? But what's really actually been percolating beneath the surface is the awareness, or the reflection of the inner state of our human nature. In other words, the inner space that you reside within. So how have you been dealing with this process? How have you been interacting with this process? Because when we hit COVID and there was a lockdown in that sense, a lot of us spent a great deal of time in an environment in which we, in a sense, weren't really always in. It doesn't mean everybody, it means a large majority of people, okay? And there was a whole entire set of instructions, a set of routines, a set of behaviors that had never been explored before that was now present with us. And one of the things that was very clear and real was a lot of people got to see themselves. You were very close to your environment of people around you. You couldn't hide from things. And so we really got a strong reflection of who we truly are. And so if we allowed that process to transform ourselves, we would come out the other side when Jupiter actually goes direct in September, and we would, what I consider to be the period, and this is the next slide I'll show up, where we get embraced by community. I'll be more specific on that a bit later. So the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek, and this is the essence here. It's like the rite of passage as we exit this cave, as we exit this place, is that we leave behind the disentangled, chaotic material, and we come out revived. We come out more authentic. We come out more real. We come out more with the potential of living a life that is more aligned with what is real and present for you in every day, right? And we are at the end phase of that. We're within the context of the story, we are now about to go through that. We're about to go through the final exam. So are you ready? Okay, there's nobody there to protect you. It is just your own emotional growth that has taken place since Saturn entered Capricorn to this point. Okay, so this is a profound time of reflection too, which is one of the words I think could be very helpful during this video. Now, I chose this picture specifically as well in terms of the bridge, because I used images of the bridge, and what I wanted to share was, what does the symbol of the bridge really represent? And I like this one even more specifically because it's got this cool little Pisces tone to it, right? And I want to share it with you, right? The bridge can symbolize a crossing, specifically here with the reason why the Pisces here. It's a crossing from one world to another. So if we think about Joseph Campbell's work around the hero's journey, and I'm not entirely familiar with the female who talked about the feminine version of this process. I will put it in the description as well. But she created and spoke about the heroine's journey, which I think is amazingly fantastic. And all women that all of you that are female that deeply resonate with transformation as a part of your process, I highly encourage you to go and invest and learn about the heroine's journey, because it's got a different tone to it, in the sense that it describes to what is really alive in you and how you interact from this world. So with me digressing, let me come back to the point here. The bridge is a representation of a passage to which we leave behind the one part of the world, and as we cross the bridge, we enter a new world, a new space. So a bridge can be perceived as the single status of a woman and a man, or two girls or two boys, and then they get married, and so the marriage itself is an arc. It's a bridge that both people cross, and when they come onto the other side, there's a union. So the bridge represents in an archetypical sense of what we're about to experience here is that we're all going to cross a bridge. We're all going to cross a bridge, and this rite of initiation. And when we cross the bridge, the tests we will have is, do you feel that you can feel strong in your integrity? Do you feel that you can identify what's correct for yourself and recognize what healing you need or what is really alive and creative in you, right? So crossing the bridge. We're acknowledging things that through Saturn's entrance into Capricorn and where it has been, and it's crossed Pluto and it's crossed Jupiter, what has become anew for you. So between now and the end of August, this process of transformation will lead you to the point where you will say, this is really real for me, and then you're going to cross this bridge metaphorically. And when you get to the other side, you're going to acknowledge that this is the new self. I'm in a new world with a new sense of identity, and this is what's real and authentic for myself. And so we're going to cross this bridge, and we're going to cross the world from the one world to the other. Okay? And that can look like ending a really, really a type of engagement or experience that is not real for you, and this is done in a way that is setting your own boundary. Again, that's also something here about these bridges is, what are your boundaries, and what do you feel you're comfortable to accept and not accept, and how can you be in charge of that? Because this is one of the things that's been very, very specific with the Moon Chiron contact, and particularly with a lot of energy moving through Aries. And I'll get into it in the next slide. So if we go on to this process here, and we say the definition of a rite of passage: a ritual or event or an experience that marks or constitutes a major milestone or change in a person's life. And this is what we're going to this is what we're going to go with. This is what we're going to experience. This can be that I no longer, like in my case, for instance, to be very real and authentic for yourself, it is to no longer allow for codependency, to no longer make excuses for other people's behavior through a spiritual lens and then invalidate what's really real for me and authentic for me. to no longer to acknowledge what's right for myself, and to feel that even though that might feel like rejection for another person or other people or my experience, it doesn't matter. But this is particularly towards the mother archetype in my lens, that it is my responsibility to nurture, heal, and take care of my own emotions. And this is a responsibility that, for me personally, I think all of us can begin to cultivate, nurture, and eventually at some point step into. This is self-mastery from Capricorn. It is not an easy task. It does come with a tremendous amount of challenges, but at some point we need to take out what is no longer working for us anymore. Okay? So a rite, a ritual, this can be at the end of the month. You can decide that you do something very specific for yourself that allows you to honor, acknowledge, or recognize the moment of crossing the bridge. So it is my suggestion, encouragement, invitation, that whatever it is that you recognize inside of yourself can no longer work for you anymore. Come to the point of what that was. Come to the point of what led you to have that in place as a protection mechanism from early childhood memory. And then from that point, literally go for a walk and create a ritual, an event, or an experience that emotionally marks the moment where you acknowledge that this is not something that you want to carry with yourself for the new world, for the new paradigm. Okay? So that once you have done that, you can give yourself, notice the key word here, give yourself, not ask anybody else to do it, but give yourself the recognition and empowerment that you have the power within inside of yourself to change your life. Okay? To give yourself the power. And this is the key word here with the Saturn. It's you can be in charge of your life. You can, and you know that if you have a moment, an experience that really empowers you in that way, that you can see and know that you are whole, that you are not, in a sense, disempowered in the experience, that you have a choice to re-empower yourself in a positive, life-affirming way. Okay? So that would be this process here. Okay, so that ends today's conversation in the sense of the astrology and the emotional transformational process and what we're going to be dealing with, and the kind of more abstract aspect of what I see is going to be taking place for us while Mars enters Aries, and particularly throughout the retrograde period, which will be the reflection process, the reinforcing of the reinforcing of the ritual, so that when Mars actually goes direct again in November, you just act from that space consistently. You redefine yourself according to this new place. Okay? All right. That being said, I'm going to shift my attention a little bit to something a little bit more deeper, and I invite you to sit with me during this experience, because I would like to share just a few thoughts on something that could be deeply beneficial, supportive, or helpful as we navigate this really, really profound, powerful, transformational period. Okay? So what you're looking at here is a model that I'm going to use that is very similar to, well, it's not very similar to, it is the model Freud used in his psychoanalytical process. And I've used this model before to articulate the way that the psyche experiences astrological transits. In other words, how can astrology be a tool to reflect the deeper unconscious to which we are experiencing our lives? And so in this sense, my intention / hope is to invite you to see the complexity of what it is that we're actually interfacing with in the human experience. And that can lead to a couple of things, one of them being a more softer, sensitive dialogue to yourself, as opposed to the more rigid, punitive kind of you should type of attitude that we've been conditioned by deeply over the last how long, Okay. So, where are my notes? Okay. So what I wanted to show you here quickly is the relationship between Saturn and the Moon, okay? And this would reflect the conscious mind. So in this sense, the conscious mind would contain all of our impressions languages and truths that we are conscious of and that we see. So I would say that the Facebook social media projection field that everybody interacts with would be out of this conscious mind experience, right? We would see images and memes and pictures and articles and people's political views and all this type of thing, and that would kind of sit at the top there. And so everyone has their own sense of Saturn, which is their sense of what they define as the truth in that sense, or this is my reality, Saturn. And the moon is how that emotional identity, how you see yourself, interfaces with your ability to assert what you define to be the truth, what you define to be as your authority. So you might say, I am a firm believer in NASA telling us that there is a planet existing here. Right, so your self-image connects to that and identifies with that imagery, and then you share that collectively, and that becomes your definition of reality, right? And this is very singular. We all have a Saturn-Moon context. And so beneath this conscious aspect, we have this pre-conscious mind. So Freud talked about this part between what we can become conscious of, and this would be represented by Uranus, actually, and Chiron. And Uranus would be a representative of a memory that we have over a span of a month or a year. So if we think about the year 2020, reflect back on different key moments in 2020 that were really intense for you. They would be in the pre-conscious mind, which is memory field beyond what is conscious for you in this moment, but is also part of an experience that which you had, Saturn, Moon, at the moment it was integrated, i.e., that, let's say, 4 months ago when we were told that this is how, or we were told this is what's happening in the world right now. Where were you in that moment? How did you process it relative to your personal sense of identity, your personal definition and worldview of life? And how was that crystallized? And then how does that become, when we are 5-6 months ahead, a kind of memory into which has shaped your expression of what you think is right or wrong at this point in time. Very, very brief, but this is pretty much what's occurring for us here. So we look to Uranus in the chart and we see, okay, Uranus is transiting through Aries, through Taurus, and what's arriving to us from the pre-conscious mind into the conscious mind is experiences that will speak to this more primordial essence that is rooted within us, okay? And so what's really fascinating about Freud's work is that he talks about the ego interfacing between the conscious and pre-conscious mind. And it's kind of like this model of identity that we have. And so this looks like your preferences, your experiences in life that shape you in some way, and they govern, right, the ability to experience other people's interaction with you and your unconscious/conscious experience with other people. So let's say you're in a conversation with somebody on the internet after a YouTube video, and you're having a discussion. You are bringing your conscious mind to something. The other person's doing the same. And the thing that filters the capacity for that interaction to work or not is the ego structure. Now, that can be very impressionable. That can be very influenced. And so what I'm seeing here with regards to the astrology at the moment is that it's very important to note that the governing tool that influences, shapes, and defines the interaction between you and another person is 1, coming from your life experience, 2, coming from the other person's life experience, 3, that the connection between those two is formed from what could be very clearly defined as a very chaos-orientated interaction, meaning that the complexity of the interaction is so much more than what is in the moment that it's not possible to fully actually grasp what is really taking place. And so what we then find ourselves when we're interacting is our judgments based on what it is that we think is occurring versus what could be occurring. So the what can I do about this, Simon, attitude is, well, openness and curiosity and feeling is a very profound attitude to take as we and you, as me, you and everybody else interact with this current energy that is moving through us at the moment. Meaning your conscious mind, as in Saturn Moon, will will be exposed to an event that is going to show up in your life. This is the rite of passage, right? Your capacity to filter what the experience is very much defined based on the rigidity of your ego structure. If you have a lot of traumas, for instance, you can have a lot of defense mechanisms, protection mechanisms in place that will define/filter the experience in a way, and that will be the outcome of your experience. So the suggestion here is that we are all, with these astrological transits, Venus in opposition to Pluto, Venus squaring Chiron, energies connecting to Chiron, are going to reveal to us subconscious material that is going to come to the surface, and depending on how we navigate that will dictate the way that we can integrate what is actually occurring at a very deeper level. Now, the reason why I wrote the superego here is because this is a governing structure that is going to reveal to us the way that we define it and judge it. But because the superego in the sense is very abstract in that way, what I want you to do is watch out for language that sounds like, looks like, or appears like a judgment on yourself that reinforces your inferiority, i.e. this is something that you judge yourself for and you fawn towards, or that you personally attack the other person because, and this is the key, is that this area over here in Jung, and in not in Jung's model, but Freud's model, he talked about the id existing here. Now, in a sense, I've left it out on purpose and replaced it more with the unconscious, and that the essence of reality that is so unfamiliar to the conscious mind that when it does arrive into the conscious mind, it becomes very, very uncomfortable, peculiar, and very disturbing. And so as we experience these transits, we are going to be exposed to Pluto, Neptune, Uranus activity. And so what is going to arrive to the surface is some really, really intense stuff that is going to look like material that is going to be very peculiar, odd, and most certainly uncomfortable to the ego. Because the ego's role is to ultimately try and govern some form of stability relative to these more latter layers. And so it is more likely for us to disassociate, defend, protect, or fawn as experiences arrive in your life right now. My invitation for everybody here is to allow the experience to fully come into the mind, come into your space, and without any sort of judgment of it, observe what it reveals to you and spend time with that process. Okay? And as the experience shows up and the ego says, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, just allow it, just like cool it down. Just like, okay, look, I realize this is really uncomfortable. This is something completely new. I haven't been exposed to this. What is the potential for this transformation? What is coming up to the surface to reveal something about my deeper self that I would not necessarily always be available to? Okay? So I'm going to leave that with you today as the more deeper complex contemplation. I really hope that you got a lot of value out of this video. Thanks very much for listening. Don't forget to share this video if you found it valuable. And if you want to work and participate in a community that we have, Patreon is available. I'll put all the links to all of the places that you can find our material in the description and the labels below. Okay? All right, everybody, stay safe, and I look forward to talking to you in another video. Take care. Bye-bye.